Tri-Valley Cares and the information that you bring puts in perspective how local the problem is and how far-reaching is. So I would love to have you. Scott Yunt, please.
Thank you, Marcia, so much. So I'm Scott Yunt. I'm the staff attorney at Tri-Valley Cares. I've been there about 10 years now. So Tri-Valley Cares stands for Communities Against a Radioactive Environment, is an organization out in Livermore, California, which is just about 45 miles east of here. It is home to the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. That laboratory, which was founded in 1952, is one of the 2 locations in the United States where all of our nuclear weapons are researched and developed. It is not a nuclear weapons production facility. They don't produce the individual weapons that go into the stockpile. No, they design them there. So this is where there's very elite scientists who are nuclear physicists and in many other fields who contribute their immense knowledge to weapons of mass destruction, thousands of them. It has an enormous budget. They spend $1.5 billion a year there just on nuclear weapons activities. That is 82% of their budget. If you look at their website, for example, you would barely know they were in the nuclear weapons research business because they highlight the small percentage of science that they do that's not nuclear related in their public relations materials. But in fact, 82% of the money that they receive, which is all federal tax money from American citizens, goes to nuclear weapons every year. Back to Tri-Valley Cares real quick. So we are a small organization that was started in 1983 by neighbors who were kind of concerned about this very large, super secret federal facility in their backyard. In 1952, Livermore had less than 5,000 people. It was a small ranching community and fairly remote, which was one of the reasons why the agency at the time picked it to have this work. It was already owned by the federal government, and it was not a Manhattan Project facility. Berkeley Lab was, but they realized for various reasons, and they continued to do some nuclear work related to nuclear weapons at Lawrence Berkeley Lab until about 1960. And there's various projects that went on, but most of the work moved to Livermore and in 1952, and the lab grew and grew, and so did the community around it. So the community is now has a population of more than 80,000, and the site is unique because it's only 1 square mile. It is not very big, and there are hundreds of buildings on site, buildings that can house nuclear materials, and there are houses right up to the fence line. It is now a suburb of the Bay Area. Many people who live there are commuters to the more urban Bay Area. However, it is also very much a company town. So most of the city council members are either former lab employees or are married to a lab employee. The town is very lab friendly. The crest of the city of Livermore has a picture of the atom included in it. The city very much benefits, the city of Livermore, from having the lab there. The lab contributes a lot of money to the schools. They built a very nice recreation center in town, which in a way buys community acceptance. It also, for many years, was managed by the University of California. However, that has changed, and I mentioned earlier the corporate interest. It is now managed by a private LLC called Lawrence Livermore National Security LLC, And it is a consortium of weapons contractors, including Bechtel Corporation, which used to be San Francisco based, and Battelle Corporation and Babcox and Wilcox, all very large weapons contractors that make billions of dollars a year off of supporting and building and managing nuclear weapons facilities, including Lawrence Livermore National Lab now. And I mention that because there used to be an air of academia around Livermore Lab because it was managed by the university, which is still part of the consortium. So, but it's not the same as it used to be. It is very clearly a profit motive. Those private companies can lobby, whereas the university couldn't, at least in the same way. And as I mentioned, this was a super secret facility, and it still is doing a lot of highly classified research. However, the citizens who formed around Tri-Valley Cares, and that was around the early 80s, in which there were very large mass protests out by Livermore Lab opposing nuclear weapons. Local citizens banded together to create a local group to kind of probe and find out more about what was happening right in their backyard, using tools like the Freedom of Information Act and attending hearings and demanding hearings and calling upon the Environmental Protection Agency to look into the lab. Information started coming out about not just what the lab was working on, but also the environmental effects of doing that research there. There's a law called Superfund or CERCLA, and it is a law that helps to deal with environmental pollution. And the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, came out and inspected Livermore Lab and found that there was, in fact, quite a bit of contamination on site, including some contamination that was radioactive. They found some tritium, which is radioactive hydrogen, in the soil. I forgot to mention too that there are actually 2 sites that are part of Livermore Lab. There is the main site in Livermore, which is just 1 square mile of very dense buildings. There's also a high explosives testing range called Site 300 in Tracy, or it's right outside in the Western Hills in Tracy, and I'll talk more about it in a minute. But Site 300 is also a Superfund site, as is every nuclear weapons site in the country. And there are many nuclear weapon sites in the country. Livermore and Los Alamos and Sandia are the 3 nuclear weapons laboratories. Really just Livermore and Los Alamos do the development and research on our nuclear weapons. Sandia has its own mission related to nuclear weapons and pairing nuclear weapons to delivery vehicles. In the interest of educating, I just want to make sure we all know what the nuclear triad is. It's the 3 ways the United States maintains weapons. There are 3 ways we would deliver the weapons in war. So the main one I think we usually think of are intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are missiles that are in silos in the ground, and they would be launched. They're unmanned, and they would fly across the world to a predetermined location. But also we develop nuclear weapons that can fly aboard airplanes and nuclear weapons that are aboard submarines. So those are our 3 parts of the nuclear triad. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what Lawrence